White House there in Ottawa. There was none. So the morning we were supposed to go to start classes, everybody that was there for the conference stood outside. And the director at that time was Bill Stewart, and his counterpart there was Sam Kazaza. They couldn't figure out why nobody was going in to get this thing on the road. Well, once we told him there's no POW flag, and he says, without the POW flag, we have nothing to start. So we wouldn't start the conference until the POW flag was flown, which took about 15 or 20 minutes. And it was up, and it's been up since.
Hi, my name is Wally Kubicki. I'm Vice Chairman of Region 4 Vets Council, and I've been on board one way or another for the last 15 years and more. First thing I'd like to say is how I actually got started is I worked for General Motors, and I worked at Electromotive, and I got laid off. And I got called over to GM SPO in Broadview, and I met a guy named John Kelly. And he's the one who actually got me started with the vets. When I first got there, I was looking at if there were any veterans in the warehouse, and they said, yeah, you got to meet John Kelly. And he had some good hiding places over there. It took me about 2 weeks to find him, but I found him. And when I met him, that's how I ended up getting involved with the vets. And then from the local level, that we found out that the UAW was mandated to create veterans committees. So we did that, and we came to a region conference, and we back then they were talking about that old oak tree or whatever, and Bill Stewart and everybody getting together, and Bob Flores and the whole crew, Ed Van Lennep, who gave, and oh boy, Steve Mulcahy, and a whole crew of guys, and we had our first conference, and at that conference, I remember we all came in here, and we had no idea what we were going to do and how we were going to do it, and we sat down in little groups or whatever, and we talked, and one thing led to another, and we created a bylaws committee and different things. And this was before, then I got put on the bylaws committee, and I was kind of proud to help write our bylaws that we have today, even though they've been updated a little bit. But pretty much that's how it got started, and we were just starting to roll, and we had, I think, one, maybe a second conference or whatever, and we then the region combined back to the original, I guess, Region 4, which was Region 10 and Region 4 back together, and that brought in what I think would really help this region and the Veterans Conference start to go is when Wisconsin came back in from Region 10, when they put us all back together. And that really, because the guys from Wisconsin do a great job, and they were on a roll there by themselves, and when we combined the two, that's when it really started to grow and get a lot better. And that crew, the whole crew from Wisconsin, Dennis Netka, and Doc, and Perry Graves, and a whole bunch. I can't remember all the names, but all the guys from Wisconsin. We had our ups and downs, how we were going to do it, how we were going to run it, and how it was going to be run. But what we did is we sat down, and that's how we created actually the board that we have today. Before we had pretty much Iowa and Illinois, but now we all sat down, we got together, and we created the board, which consists of the chairman from each state, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and a vice chair, and a chairman, and a sergeant at arms. That creates the board, and I think it's worked quite well. It's been a lot of fun for me. We've done a lot, and I owe a lot to a lot of the guys. Like I said, especially guys like Ed Van Lennep and Steve Mulcahy. When I needed some answers on some vets questions, I'd always call Ed. And actually, he's the only doggy I ever liked. I know John Kelly he was in the Army, but he was a medic. He don't count. Probably Ed Van Lat's probably the only dog, the only straight-legged that I ever liked, but don't tell nobody. I think we're going in the right direction. I'm proud, and to be a part of this for these last 15 years, or 16 years actually probably, since we really started going, and I'm glad that I got a great wife, and she supported me, Janine supported me, or actually Snowflake supported me in all the years that I've been involved, and I think if it wasn't for her, I don't really know if we'd all, I don't think if it was any of our better halves that any of us would even be here today. So I know I wouldn't be here. I'd probably be in some gutter somewhere. But anyway, I want to thank everybody. I thank John and Ed and Ralph Pauley and Steve Mulcahy and I don't know, the whole old crew and especially Janine. I'm proud to be a part of this. And oh, by the way, I was a United States Marine from 1965 to 1969. Did my tour of 13 months from January 66 till I came home in April of 67.
Hey, my name's Dennis Galloway. I'm originally out of Local 152. I'm presently with Local 2096 in Pontiac, Caterpillar. Started with the Veterans Conference in Local 152, helped get that one started. I was part of the original group that helped get Bill Stewart. We cornered Bill Stewart under the oak tree to get him start considering the Veterans Conference. We got that going. Wasn't too much involved in the actual starting of it, but was part of that original group. I worked, got our local veterans going quite often. I worked with on the Veterans Committee here at the region level as a legislative liaison off and on for several years. When I finally retired out of Local 152, I ended up at Pontiac, Illinois, where I was on the Veterans Committee there. Came to several Veterans Conferences, been up to Black Lake once. Always enjoyed going to these conferences and the camaraderie that we've always had. My military history is went to service in the 60s, 62 I believe it was, and took my basic down at Fort Leonard Wood. Then I went to Fort Polk my second 8 weeks. While I was there, they asked for volunteers for the 3rd Infantry Presidential Honor Guard in Washington, D.C. 300 people volunteered for it, only 3 of us made it, so pretty honored that way. Ended out in Washington, D.C. in the Presidential Honor Guard in A Company, which did the street cordon. Took part in JFK's funeral and had the honor of being in that. He actually stood guard on his grave for about an hour, giving everybody a shot at that. Spent another couple of years in the States, different places, Savannah Army Depot, Fort Carson, Colorado. At Carson, I got orders for Vietnam. Went to Vietnam, served with the 1st Battalion, 5th Cav, Delta Company, Recon Platoon. Spent a year over there with them. I was one of the first replacements from the first major battle of Vietnam, which was the Battle by Drang. And did my time over there, came back, spent a couple more months in the States, and ended up getting out. And started getting involved in politics. Back where with my old local, with the veterans. That's one of the reasons they made me a legislative liaison, because I was involved with politics quite a bit. Even got elected as a delegate to the Democratic National Convention at one time, so did a little work on that. One of the things I was always proud about was the information I was able to bring back from the Veterans Conferences. One of the things I've always really enjoyed was the one that I got information about the merchant marines being made given veteran status. I We had 2 people in our local 152 that had that were merchant Marines that came back, gave them the information where to send their information to get their veteran status, and then both of them came back to me afterwards and thanked me very much because they got their honorable discharge from the Department of Defense, and now they were eligible for veterans benefits. And they were getting ready to retire pretty soon, so they were something they were pretty proud to have after all these years being in the Merchant Marines. So, really happy with that was one of the accomplishments I really enjoyed, besides all the other information I always brought back from our conferences.